Hey, today I'm going to show you my take on some modular building blocks that can be used for tabletop wargames or RPG games. These can be used with other pieces of terrain to fit together seamlessly to build nice landscapes or interesting encounters. Starting out, I'm using 2-inch XPS foam. I cut the pieces down into 2-inch by 2-inch squares. After this was done, I started the process of texturing. You'll see that I'm kind of cutting off the corners and then cutting random bits into it. Then I shake it up with some rocks, and then I use other rocks to go ahead and accentuate the lines to make them a little more defined. I then also cut some 4-inch by 4-inch blocks, after which I decided to then cut in half to make them a little bit more versatile. I used the exact same technique to texture the rocks. So again, if you kind of just cut directly underneath and then peel off the edge, you can see you kind of get a cool corner looking effect. And then for the rest, I just kind of did random cuts on the side. So I did do some sped up sequences of the entire cutting process so you can kind of see how I chose to make my cuts, which is no real methodology. I will say the most important part of doing this to get a good look is actually having some stones with some sharp edges to press into them. So shaking up the stones, but then also accentuating the cuts that you made with a sharp rock. After becoming hyper aware that I was making building blocks, I decided, what better to fix that than to add in magnets. So in order to do that and make sure that they all worked, I needed to find the exact center of each so that I could line them up. I marked the bottoms with X's, and then for each 1-inch by 1-inch indentation, I went ahead and put the magnets in top and bottom. I only wanted to do the top and bottom because it starts to get really complicated. I guess it doesn't get that complicated, but I'm not that smart. I then realized that I actually had a jig because measuring out this is extremely horrible to do. It takes a long time, and if you've already textured them, the edges are irregular. I have a jig that is just 1-inch by 1-inch with thumbtacks, and you just press it in and it actually gives you the exact spot that you want to put it in. So then I added more magnets. Again, you can see X side down. The X, which is the bottom, is relatively untextured, so once they're painted, it'll be easy to tell them apart. I then did the classic glue and black paint. You can see I primed them all up.
So the technique for painting these is really simple, but there are some things that I learned along the way. So starting out with a base coat that is black, and then using a lot less paint than I am using here. As you can see, this is going on really thick, and it's covering up all of those black locations that would actually be used as highlights. So you can see the spots where I have less paint looks a lot better. I learned my lesson, and you see that I actually do a dry brush. And so also one thing that's much better to do is use a much darker color for your initial dry brush. So use just a plain base gray, and then you can go over it again with another dry brush of much lighter.
But if you do mess up like me, all you have to do is do a wash over it, and then you can dry brush it again. So you bring some of those really light colors down in tone, and then you can highlight it back up again. So I put all of these on blocks to dry so that the actual wash would seep down into the cracks and all go facing the same way, almost like liquid would as it was running down a stone. Didn't want to leave it on its side, otherwise it might dry and pool in weird ways. And you can see here I have some gloves on, and I'm just using those so that I can take off some of the paint so that I'm using a lot less as I go through. For the blocks that I put too much paint on, I went ahead and did an additional wash on those, which, as you can see, once again, is most of them. After this, you can see what the final product looks like for just stone texture, and you can see kind of how the magnets work, how they fit together, and how easy it is to tell them apart. Then I went ahead and added in a green wash, and I mostly added this into the cracks and then the areas around the cracks. Then I painted on a bit of clear Elmer's glue, and then I just dusted on a bit of flocking that has just a couple of bits mixed in there. And then I just sprinkle it on and just kind of flick it off. So the areas that don't have any other glue on it will just come right off. And you can see it just sticks into the crevices and spots where it looks like moss would grow. I then put a couple of different variations of flocking, mixed them with a bit of glue. I also added in a little bit of water to thin it down a bit so I could get some kind of chunky moss looks. And then I also just to get variation, tampered in some different kinds of moss. And you can see on these 2-inch by 2-inch blocks, I perfected my methodology a little bit more, where I'm doing a much lighter brush and not actually painting so much. And so you can see I dramatically reduced my paint time by doing this, so I didn't have to do as many layers. And yeah, the effect looks just about the same, if not even better. So I did the same thing with these 2-inch by 2-inch blocks. You can see these are just really thin. I put magnets in the bottom of those as well, so that I can have some grid. And you can see the final product of what they all look like. This is just kind of the set that I made. I was actually not even intending to do the 2-inch by 2-inch blocks, but since I had cut them out, I decided, hey, what the hell, why not do it? And yeah, they're okay. But yeah, as you can see, I mean, they fit together pretty well, and then I have the little toppers on top that you can just take off. So that way you can choose to have a grid if you want, and then there's a bunch of different configurations you can put them in. And you can see the magnets are relatively strong, and so with these blockers, you can add in a bunch of different verticality to your games, mix and match them with other pieces of terrain. So you can see I have just regular dungeon tiles that I mix them with, and you can see that you could use them to go up, and you could even make it almost like a jump puzzle in games. Like if you're playing DND or something, you could get things that people could climb. You could have people using their movement spells. I would just highly suggest that if you are doing this, you go ahead and let your players know that, hey, think about your movement spells. We're going to be doing something with some verticality.
Anyways, be sure to like and subscribe and drop a comment for the algorithm, and I'll catch you on the next one.